to stream to.
I'm seeing classroom management title slide on the screen in here. Is there anything else I need to do?
Just hit that stream to and see if she's playing now. It should just be the live stream 1, 2, 3.
I can see Sharon. I can see the classroom.
And you can kind of hear something. Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, sorry.
Is there anyone in here who is a licensed counselor, therapist, or nurse that's getting a CEU for this class? Okay, I have a sign-up sheet if that applies to anyone in here. Am I good?
Yes, ma'am. And you're not going to wear a mic. You're just going to talk loud.
Stand over here.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for being patient with the technology, and we are so excited to be here in Lawton today. This is classroom management. Like I said, this link is to the PowerPoint, and this link is to some handouts that I made just to get you started with some of the ideas that I'll be presenting today. To introduce myself, I'm Sharon Morgan. I'm the brand new Early Childhood Director at the State Department. I have just been there for a few weeks. Before coming to the state, I've taught 18 years in Oklahoma, in early childhood, in Oklahoma City, Putnam City, and Piedmont is where I came from before going to the State Department. National Board Certified. I was one of the Teacher of the Year finalists last year, so I started in the last year working with the State Department on committees and that kind of thing before coming on this summer. So, here's the reason that I do this. My two daughters, they will be a senior in high school and a freshman in high school in Piedmont this year. So, just want to hear a little bit about you. Raise your hand if you are an administrator, counselor. Okay, we have pre-K, kindergarten, first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Okay, and I'm going to warn you when I've got some feedback. I think these ideas can apply to all grade levels, but my particular examples tend to come from early childhood because that's my classroom. So I will try to modify as best I can and make sure that there are strategies for everyone. So when I was getting ready to do this, I was reflecting on my 18 years of teaching and thinking about mistakes that I had made, what worked for me, what didn't work. I've made many, many mistakes as far as classroom management over the years. This can be done in so many different ways. So this has been kind of quiet, but if you have any ideas or strategies that have worked for you in the classroom, I want you to go ahead and say those because I know that many of these strategies can be implemented in a lot of ways. Just starting, does anyone have a classroom management strategy that they use at their school that's popular that works well?
We greet our students when they come in.
Okay, that's part of mine. Anything else that has worked for you?
They use callback techniques to
Okay.
get groups back in.
Okay, very good. And I don't really have that. I don't really have that in my presentation, but yes, having a callback, quiet signals, those kinds of things. And talking with teachers during these presentations, Classroom Dojo has come up a number of times. Anybody use Classroom Dojo? It's online. You can give them points, take them away. I haven't used it personally, but I believe you can even note specific behaviors and report to the parents. One man in a session even talks about Live School. I don't know if you've ever heard of Live School, but I guess it's like Classroom Dojo, but it has a few more features. So if you're looking for something like that, I believe you can just use it on your phone or an iPad and track behavior that way. Okay, so when I reflected on my classroom and what works with classroom management, I came up with these three important areas. First of all, an atmosphere of respect in your classroom. You want to foster an atmosphere of respect between your students and between yourself and your students. I think initially this was an area that I really struggled with, and that I would teach respectful behavior at the beginning of the year, but we didn't really have any procedures to practice it in a guided practice. So they would tend to break down after the first couple of months. We were very respectful to each other at the beginning, and then after a few months, it just wasn't working. When I was going through the National Board process, one of the components was to describe how you create a classroom community, and I can't say I was very good at it, so it was something that I had to work on. So I'm going to show you how using a morning meeting can help create an atmosphere of respect in your classroom. Also, having behavior expectations, making sure that your students know what's expected of them, you have rules, and your responses to behavior set up in your classroom. And then finally, those all-important classroom procedures. They know exactly what they're supposed to do and when they're supposed to do it, how they're supposed to do it. So if you have an atmosphere of respect where you're creating relationships in your class, they know what's expected of them as far as behavior, and they know what to do in your procedures. Hopefully, and it doesn't always work, but hopefully you'll have a classroom where you're able to teach and not always stopping for behavior. So as I said, an atmosphere of respect, that was probably one of my biggest challenges as a teacher. And so I went to a mentor, and she gave me the morning meeting book, which is part of Responsive Classroom. So we started our day, every single day, with a morning meeting. Now, depending on your class, you may have to modify this. I know some teachers would just do a meeting on Monday or Friday. They would have to shorten it. So make it work for you. But morning meetings set the tone for respectful learning and establishes a climate of trust that encourages children to take risks. In your classroom, you're going to push children harder than they want to be pushed. You're going to ask them to do tasks that they've never done before. And they need to, it will be better if they're in a classroom where they know they're going to be supported. The morning meeting addresses two human needs: the need to feel a sense of significance and belonging, and the need to have fun. We greet and include everyone in our morning meeting. We do some silly games just to start off the day. That just sets a good tone for the whole day. The morning meeting merges social, emotional, and intellectual learning. I use the morning meeting as also a skill review, but it's also a time to really practice those social and emotional skills. So when you do projects where you're collaborating together or where you're working or someone's presenting, we know how to act in those situations. So in an ideal situation, and I know it will have to be modified, I've had to modify it depending on the number of students in our schedule. In an ideal situation, the morning meeting has 4 elements. Starts with a greeting, then you have a time to share, and then a little group activity, and then you end with a morning message to go into your regular school day. So those are the 4 components. So in my classroom, my little friends do their jobs. They sit around the perimeter of the carpet, and we have a greeting. And at the very beginning of the year, I talk to them about how you should greet another person. Doing the greeting sets a positive tone, provides a sense of belonging, helps them learn names, and practice hospitality, how we treat others. So, hey, can I have your name?
Cheryl.
Okay, so this is Cheryl. So I would model this at the beginning of the year. So I would say, good morning, Cheryl.
Good morning.
And you notice how she smiled back at me? I used a friendly tone, I used her name, and I made eye contact. Now I made an asterisk on eye contact because we know we have some cultures that don't make direct eye contact. So we talk about the difference between attending to a person and looking around and not even paying attention at all. After I model it correctly, I model it taking out each one of those elements. So I would come up and I would say, good morning, Cheryl. And you can just tell the atmosphere in the classroom that everybody, it just makes you feel bad. So I'm not treating her with respect when I do that. Also, I could say good morning, which is fine, but I would be saying that to anyone in the room, so it doesn't really make her feel special. Also, I could say, good morning, Cheryl, but I'm talking to you, but I'm really not even paying attention to you. So I'm really not showing respect. So we start the first day talking about that. That's how we talk to others. We use a friendly tone, we use their name, we use eye contact to greet. Now, once at the very beginning of the year, I would just go around the circle, say good morning, she'd say good morning back, we just keep going until we knew everyone's name. When that becomes pretty routine, I would change it up a little. For example, I have cards with greetings in different languages. So after we said good morning, I had a morning meeting leader, and so the leader might pick a card, and we might be saying hello from the Netherlands. We would look on the map, talk about where that was, talk about the pronunciation. Then instead of saying good morning, we just use a different language. We also would do some silly things. If you've ever heard of who stole the cookie from the cookie jar, anybody done that one? I actually had a little cookie, and we would do who stole the cookie from the cookie jar. Sharon stole the cookie from the cookie jar. Who? Yes, you could be. Then who? Then we pass it to the next person, and we do everyone in the class. There are some greetings in the handouts that were on that link just to get you started. Some days when I was really pressed for time, we might just do a quick greeting where I set the timer for 1 minute and they were supposed to 3 friends in the classroom and then go back to their spot. So it can be as quick as you want it to be, or you can do something longer. This really should be an elephant for my favorite greeting, but I was only allowed 1 tub on Engage, so I had to bring a little bear. But one of my favorite greetings, and I will say, even some of my older friends that will come back and visit my classroom, my first grade classroom, love this one, but it was Willoughby Wallaby. Anybody use Willoughby Wallaby? It's a poem. It's in your handout, but you can look it up on YouTube or any number of resources. But it goes like this. It's a little rhyme. It goes, Willoughby Wallaby woo, the elephant sat on you. Willoughby Wallaby wee, the elephant sat on me. Then you make a rhyming word. Willoughby Wallaby wherein, the elephant sat on Sharon. Then you pass it to the next person. Willoughby Wallaby where'll, the elephant sat on Cheryl. And then we would talk about saying those words. So if I say wherein, is that kind of a silly way to say my name? Yes. Am I going to cry and get upset if somebody laughs a little bit when I use a silly word like that? No, I'm not going to get upset. Because you have your friend that tattles all the time because they think everything that's going on is personal and a personal attack. So we talk about, it's not a personal attack. We're just having fun. We're just going to be a little silly. So again, that sets the tone for, we're not always attacking. Sometimes we're just silly and we just laugh. I also use this for review. So if we were doing a digraph, we might make it Chillaby Tollaby or Syllaby Sollaby. You just have to be careful of the rhyming words. You don't want to make bad words. P is not a good one for that. And then also, you sometimes have students that their names don't rhyme very well. So we would come in, do our job, sit in our circle. Our leader would pick the greeting. I had an interactive dice tool on my smartboard, or you could just pick it out of a bucket where they would roll the dice and the greeting would come up, and that's what we would do that morning. And so we do our greeting, like you said. I feel like that's just a vital aspect of the day. We're saying everybody's name. We're making sure everybody feels important first thing in the morning. It also helps with those students who are so quiet, they just tend to fade in the background. It happens. I think back to my classroom, and I think how many times maybe I let someone fall through the cracks that shouldn't have because they were so quiet. I believe this also helps with my more difficult students because they tend to have a chaotic lifestyle and they don't always get acknowledged in a positive way. So this makes sure that we do that. Also, when my difficult students get to be the leader and facilitate it, gives them more confidence and it helps. So we've done a greeting, and then we do a sharing time. In my classroom, the leader does the sharing. We do one person every day. If you weren't able to do a morning meeting every day, you might have a sign-up sheet. Maybe you're only doing it on Fridays, and you allow 3 people to share. They can sign up. It develops communication skills, gains the knowledge of others. And it's amazing how our little ones don't realize that you have spaghetti for dinner just like I have spaghetti for dinner. I don't know how many times they've shared, we had tacos last night. They're like, oh, we have tacos sometimes in our house. It helps them understand each other in a different way. It helps them practice speaking in a group, strengthens vocabulary skills, and encourages reading and writing success and builds confidence. If you are at a younger level, you might even just be asking them to share using a complete sentence. We talk a lot about complete sentences during the morning meeting. We always use a complete sentence. We always answer questions with a complete sentence. Here's a strategy that I used in my classroom. And again, modify it as needed for your class, but we had cubes when we were sharing. This would be the introduction, these would be the details, and this was the conclusion. So for example, I might say, we went on a vacation to Nashville. We saw the Grand Ole Opry, we stayed in a hotel, we went shopping. Conclusion was always difficult for my kids, so I would have them restate their favorite part or an opinion. I had fun on my vacation. So that was what I would say. Of course, at the beginning of the year, we might just start with an introduction and a detail, and then work up to this, kind of depending on my class. But then, when I was in writing time, and we were starting to write paragraphs and stories, I could use the same structure. Okay, we start with an introduction, you have your details, and you work to the end. So that was one way that we would increase our oral language skills during the morning meeting, which supported our writing skills later. I had my friends, so they would share. We would try to stay on topic, especially with the little ones. They tend to go all over the place with their stories. We'd stay on topic, and then I would have them call in 2 or 3 friends to ask a question. And the rule was you couldn't ask a yes or no question. It couldn't be, did you have fun? Or something like that. It had to be an open-ended question. Why did you go there? What was your favorite part? Those types of questions. The person who was sharing had to answer it in a complete sentence. If you said, what is your favorite color, they had to say, my favorite color is red. Because when you think about your standards, standard 1 is speaking and listening. You covered that quite a bit in this morning meeting procedure. Also, when you think about your standard for research, standard 6, they are asking questions that they will later go research. So this is a great time to lay that foundation also, because we're learning to ask good questions. So we've done our greeting, had someone had the leader share, answered some questions, and then, oh, and I forgot this one, I'm sorry, it's okay. So I just wanted to use her as an example of how this impacts learning. So this is a little friend in my class, and she was one of those friends who was very, very quiet. She was sweet as could be, hard worker, but she was quiet. She would not initiate a conversation with me unless it was an emergency. If I asked her a question, she would only give a few word answer. You probably had students like that in your class. Well, and she didn't like morning meetings. She didn't want to share. She didn't want to be up at the front. But slowly, through the morning meeting, I learned that, of course, she loves to ride horses. So that became my connection with her. I knew she liked horses, so slowly I was able to make that relationship with her. Also, during writing time, and she was one of those students that tended to kind of hover at the benchmark. You know, it was difficult for her. She didn't like writing that much. We started writing stories about horses. And then slowly, you know, her confidence builds because she knew a lot about horses. And it really helped her learn. So knowing their interests and integrating that into your classroom really is beneficial. A couple years ago, I had a class and they were so athletic. They were always asking me how to spell names of players, and I didn't even know who the players were. So through the morning meeting, as I learned that, we already Center had rosters, and it had team names and all those kinds of things. I hope that I would have learned that about her if we hadn't done a morning meeting, but I'm not sure I would have. So morning meeting really helps me get to know my students also. Just an idea, if you'll notice on her lap, there's a bear. We had a classroom stuffed animal. It was just our classroom. At Meet the Teacher night, I just took pictures of 3 of the cheapest bears at Build-A-Bear, and I put them up, and they got to vote on Meet the Teacher what they wanted as their class bear, and then on the first day they found out what it was. And then we named it together, and it went into a backpack with a journal, and went home with somebody different every day. So they wrote in the journal what they did with the bear, and then they reported the next day. So that's why we have this picture, because our bear champ went to writing lessons with her. So we've done our sharing time. We'll do a little group activity. In all honesty, if you're pressed for time or the days, you've got a lot of things to do, sometimes this part might be skipped, but hopefully you'll have a little bit of time. But this encourages a sense of community, active participation, and encourages cooperation and inclusion. I would have special needs friends come to my class just for this time because they needed that social interaction. It allows for varying abilities and it reinforces learning. So here are some ideas. This is a picture of my class, and we were just simply singing a continent song because we were doing a math unit. So sometimes during this time we just do a little brain break. We do a song. If we had a poem that went with what we were studying, we would do that. The games up there are kind of my little toolbox of games that don't take very much prep time. Sometimes we'd add math into the morning meeting by having a mystery number game where the leader would pick a number between, for us it was between 1 and 100, just depending on your grade level, you could change that. And then they would ask, the other friends would guess the number, and they'd have to say greater than or less than. Match up, sometimes I would pass out cards, for example, rhyming cards, and they'd have to find their partner and talk about the rhyming cards. If you're older, you might do that with states and capitals or homonyms or something like that. Pass out cards, they have to find their partner. You actually could also integrate that with a greeting. If you were pressed for time, you could hand out cards, they could find their partner and greet, and then go back to their spot. We love to play headbands. Have you all ever played headbands? It's just a cute little game of Walmart. It was my kids, one of their favorite games, but you put on the headband, you put a card right in front, and the person with the headband can't see the card. And they have to ask questions to figure out what's on there. I would do that with vocabulary words, sight words. Sometimes we put pictures that related to the story we were reading that week. So I would say, well, something happened to our story, so they would have to ask, is it the character, is it the setting, is it the beginning, middle, end, something like that. So really, we're just reviewing what we've been learning. Acted out, we played charade games all the time, because again, very simple, didn't take any prep time for me. I could pull out a vocabulary word, they would act it out and try to guess. So we've done a group time, and then We would end the morning meeting with a morning message, and this would transition us into the day. We discussed upcoming events, the schedule. If you're younger, you might put in calendar activities, classroom jobs, venue, other daily routines. This is an example of a morning message that I would have written to my first graders. You'll notice in the younger grades, writing that whole date would take us all morning long. So I would just take out a piece of the date. If you're pre-K or kindergarten, you might even take out the first letter and have them write the first letter. I had my leader fill this out. I would put sentence frames, and you could do that, make them more complex for older grades. Like her favorite color is blank because I would have a leader write it, but we're writing it together as a class, and we're talking about, those sentence structures. I put in something about content. If I was doing plants, I might have them do plant vocabulary. You can put in a math problem or something science and social studies related for the morning message. So we've done our greeting, had a sharing time, we've asked our questions, we've done a little group activity as a brain break, we've done our morning message, and now we're ready to move into our day. Okay, so putting those procedures into place to create relationships in your classroom is so important. The next aspect of classroom management is your behavior and learning expectations. So you need to make sure that your students know what's expected of them. Now, I always created classroom rules together in collaboration with my class. I talked to one teacher in a session, and whatever management system their school used, they actually already had rules in place. So she created a classroom creed together with her class so that they had something that they had created together. Creating them together gives the kids ownership over the rules. It's their classroom. They help create the rules. It's important to talk about why the rules are vital for the classroom before you make them. If you're older, you might have them write a story about what would our classroom look like if there were no rules. I would use stories like David's stories. Of course, we all know David. We all love David because we all have a little piece of David in us, I believe. So we talk about why we need rules. Give me a thumbs up. Has anyone ever read The Day the Monster Came to School? Do you know that story? It's called The Day the Monster Came to School. It's an old story. I don't know that anybody knows who actually wrote it. You can find it on YouTube. This was from Teachers Pay Teachers. But it's called The Day the Monster Came to School. So I would read this before we actually formulated our rules. So it says, when Andy got on the bus on the first day of school, he saw a monster and was very surprised. He did not know that monsters were allowed to go to school, but there the monster was. It was making all kinds of noise and would not sit down. It climbed on the seats, put its head out the window. It took up so much room that Andy had no place to sit. Wow, that monster sure is noisy. I bet it isn't even supposed to be here, Andy whispered to Vivian. But Andy's teacher was not at all surprised to see the monster enter the classroom. It pushed ahead of everyone, grabbed a box of toys, and dumped them on the floor. When Andy and the other children sat in their places, the monster started to throw toys. Stop that, cried the teacher. Even monsters aren't allowed to throw toys. The monster dropped the toys and started screaming. It screamed so loudly that no one could hear the teacher. Be quiet, the teacher finally said. The monster stopped screaming and the teacher said, it's time to play outside. Everyone stood up and walked to the door. Everyone except the monster. It ran out the door without waiting for directions. Outside, the monster continued to behave like a monster. It pushed some children and took toys from others. It climbed up the slide the wrong way and sat at the top so no one else could slide down. When the students returned to the classroom, the teacher tried to read them a story, but the monster shouted and laughed, and no one could hear. Then it pulled the toys off the shelves again. It would not listen. At lunchtime, the monster grabbed other people's sandwiches. It dropped food on the floor and spilled milk. And later, when it was time to paint, the monster ran around the room painting big black lines on the children's paintings. When the children formed a circle and tried to sing, the monster jumped around and stepped on their toes. It pounded the piano until the teacher had to close it, and at rest time, the monster laughed and talked and poked the children. Come here, said the teacher, who was finally very angry. You are a real monster. Monsters are not allowed in school. Go away and never come back. And do you know what happened? The monster burst into tears. Everyone was astonished. I'm sorry, cried the monster. I've never been to school before. I did not know it was against the rules to shove and run and push or grab and throw things. Please don't tell me I can't come back. I like school and will try to learn if you will help me. The teacher asked the children what they thought. The children decided to make a list of rules. They would let the monster stay if it followed the rules. The monster promised he would try his best. So this just sets a purpose of why we need rules in class, so that the kids understand. Also, I think it's a good lesson. Sometimes our children, they just just don't know the rules. They just don't understand how they're supposed to behave. And many times when they have academic problems, we teach them, but when they have behavioral problems, we tend to punish them. So it is important to teach them how they should behave. Now, that being said, sometimes you teach them all day long and they're still not doing the right thing. So that happens too. But this sets a purpose. So I'm just gonna stop right now. You've been listening to me for a while. Write down or think about what do you think are the 4 most important rules in a classroom. So if you were the student and you had to write down 4 important rules, what do you think it would be?
One of mine is respect.
Okay, I was gonna ask. So respect. Can you think of anybody put another rule?
Listen to the teacher.
Listen to the teacher. I've noticed that when we're brainstorming, that one doesn't usually come up. So I make sure to add that in. Listen to the teacher or follow rules. Kids don't usually come up with that one. I saw you writing. Respectful, listen to the teacher. What else?
Mine is always been always tell the truth.
Oh, tell the truth. That's a good one. That's a good one. Anybody else?
Raising your hand. We
Okay.
call on.
Okay.
That way not everyone's trying to say the answer at the same time.
Right. We usually have ones like work hard or be safe, those types of procedures. But generally speaking, no matter who's in your class, those same rules come up every single time. So I've had teachers though that don't want to give that control of their class. Generally, it's the same every year. In my younger grade classes, we would make a list of what we should be doing in class because they tend to want to make lists of do not do this, do not do that. So I make them tell me what they should be doing, and then I help them group them. Well, these two kind of sound the same. We can make a respectful rule here. If you were in an older grade, a strategy that I love is giving them 4 Post-it notes and having them write a rule on each one, and then having one child bring up a Post-it note and read it, and then see if anybody else has a rule that goes along with it. And then you can group them on the wall and make rules that way. So those are some ways that you can create rules together. Make sure your rules are clear. Everybody should understand what the rules mean. If it's a rule, like be respectful, make sure your kids understand what respectfulness is. I would make a chart about what the rule looks like and what it sounds like in our classroom. Make sure they're complete. It should include all behaviors. If you have a friend not doing the right thing, you should be able to tie it back to one of your rules. And then consistent, you should be able to enforce. Don't make a rule that you can't enforce. Make sure you can enforce them in all situations. And I'm going to tell you, after 18 years, I can't say that without telling you that there were definitely days where Johnny just sat under that desk and broke those little crayons because I couldn't take it for just 1 more second. So those types of days happen, but try to be as consistent as you can because even those difficult kids, they really wish to hold them accountable for their behavior. Has anyone ever heard of the PBIS system, Positive Behavior Intervention Systems? Okay, we used it. You'll use that at your school. Okay, it's a system. It's part of the State Department's OTIS, and I actually have some flyers if you want to look. It's a tiered intervention system. It's similar to RTI. It's as RTI is to reading, PBIS is to behavior. So it's a tiered intervention system. But this is how we implement it in our school. You would have a school-wide word or the 3 R's or something that was consistent throughout the school. And ours, I was in Piedmont, so we were Piedmont Pride. So the entire school had pride, which meant prepared, respectful, integrity, discipline, and effort. And then when it says prepared means be ready, that's how my class defined that word. When we talked about being prepared, what did that mean? Be ready. And then we would talk about what it looked like and what it sounded like in our class. Respectful means be nice. Integrity means do the right thing even when no one is watching. Discipline means use self-control, and effort means try your best. We had an action to go with each rule, and we said them every single day at the morning meeting. Every single day. They could say them in their sleep. So then I also had the rules, I just printed these and put them in frames, but you could make a poster. So it spelled pride on my wall, and I had them take a dry erase marker and actually sign this, stating that they were going to follow the rules that we had created together. That way, if they weren't doing the right thing, I can say, see, your name is up here. That's what I'm expecting you to do. Then here was a chart we had for the whole school. Of course, this would have to, have administrative buy-in, and you have to work together. But so here were our pride words. This is how pride looked in my classroom. This is how we created it. And this is how you show pride in every single area of the school. So this was pride in the bathroom, pride in the cafeteria, pride in the hallway, pride pride on the playground, and pride at arrival and dismissal. So this was consistent for every single student in the school. Another part of this that was very helpful was we always had trouble as teachers teaching all of those procedures on the first day. I don't know if anybody else has trouble with that, but you're teaching all your procedures in your classroom, then you do your school tour, and you're teaching all the cafeteria, all these places. And by the time I would go home, I'm exhausted. I've probably forgotten 10 procedures. So-and-so gets in trouble because Mrs. Morgan forgot to tell them where to put the napkins, or something like that would happen. So to help with that, we had non-classroom teachers teach the procedures in all the other areas of the school. So I had my class, we went through our morning, we would go to the cafeteria, and the principal taught the cafeteria rules. And then we go to the hallway, and our counselor would teach the hallway rules. And we go outside, and our reading specialist would teach the playground rules. And we go to the bathroom, and I think we had a special needs teacher teach those procedures. We just spent, about 5 minutes in each spot. We had a whole rotation for the whole school. That way, the procedures were taught consistently throughout the entire school. So this is up here if you want to look at it. But those were the rules in our classroom and across our school. So now, to be honest, this is, to me, what I struggled with. I think one of the biggest things is how I respond to behavior. So we have students doing the right thing, not doing the right thing. How do I respond to that? So when I started 18 years ago, I believe it was assertive discipline. I didn't know I was brand new. I didn't know what I was doing. So everybody had a color card chart. So we had color cards, and when you didn't do the right thing, you moved your color card back. According to the book of professional development that I went to, you were not allowed to move the card back. Once they moved it, it was supposed to stay that way. So I did colored cards, but what would happen was if we were goofing around in the morning, I didn't want to move their colored card because then for the whole day, they already had a warning, right? And they couldn't. I mean, what incentive was it for them to do better for the rest of the day when you'd already moved their card back? So I struggled with that for a few years, and then the clip chart came out. And I have lots of friends who use the clip chart very effectively, but on a clip chart, you clip in the middle, but you can go up and down. So you can redeem yourself. If you go down, you can go back up. And one of the problems I had as a teacher is that I forgot to clip them up. I mean, it wasn't intentional, but I was busy doing groups and this, that, and the other. And by the end of the day, I had a few that would go down, but nobody would really go up. Parents didn't understand why their kids weren't going up. Great kids who really just weren't grabbing my attention because they were doing the right thing and didn't go up. So I struggled with that one. So then we go to this PBIS system and we talk about doing tickets. So they do a good job. I'm training them to do the right thing. They get a ticket. So of course, you can imagine, you can see my pattern. I forgot to give out the tickets. So it's time to buy things. Oh, nobody has a ticket. Or here I'm like, here's my 5 tickets because I forgot. And it's not intentional. We're just so busy during the day that it needs to be simple. So one way that I solved that, I may not be able to find it, they had little foam coins, or you could use cubes or something. My kids had numbers in the classroom, and so I would put their number on the coins or the cubes. They had 3 of them with their number, and the number was mostly so they didn't steal other people's coins or cubes. So they had 3 coins that they kept in a little bag. And if they weren't doing the right thing, I would say, put your coin in the bucket. They would take a coin, they would put it in the bucket. At the end of the day, they would get the same number of tickets as they had coins. That way, I knew that if they had done a good job, they at least got 3 tickets a day. And then I would continue to give them out during the day, but that way, if I had one of those days and I just didn't get to it, I knew that they had some tickets. And then we would have a store with our tickets, and I would have binders. I had one binder for privileges that were 10 tickets, a binder for 20 tickets, a binder for 30 tickets. They were all privileges that did not cost me any money at all. They were things like not wearing shoes in class, taking the spot that you wanted to sit, all the way up to eating lunch with the teacher, more iPad time. They could use markers on their work, those types of activities. Our pre-K and kindergarten, when they did this, buying privileges of different denominations was too difficult. So everything in kindergarten and pre-K was 10 tickets, and then they had a list. So when the child got 10 tickets, they gave to the teacher. The list went home to the parents. The parents and the child decided on the privilege, and then they just sent it back. And then she enforced it. Our older grades, they were more complicated. Really, they were in 5. They had lots of different ways to spend. I have had teachers in my sessions talk about they had school-wide privileges. So if you wanted to save up your money and do a movie or extra recess or something like that, you could. So that was finally what worked for me, is I would give out the tickets, but they had coins, so I knew that they would get tickets if they did the right thing. Also, I have a think sheet in your handouts. Another area that I thought was difficult as a teacher was always documenting that behavior, which of course you need to do, you need to document, but I mean, especially in class of 3 or 5 or 6 kids doing the wrong thing, and you would spend a lot of time documenting, so we would have a think sheet where they'd have to put their name on there. Depending on the time of year and grade you had, you might draw a picture instead of writing, but they would have to tell what happened, how they felt, what they were gonna do better next time, and then I could use this for documentation and I could sit at home. And I could make some notes on there without having to keep all the burden on the teacher. In the PBIS system, so it's a tiered intervention system, hopefully, if you have a regular class, the tickets will work for most of your students. Then you're gonna have this bit that needs some extra reinforcement. We worked with a team of our counselor, principal, and a special needs teacher to devise interventions for those, but I mostly had a little strip on their desk, and when they needed extra reminders, I would just put a little check mark, and then I would make them go do laps at recess time. So they were still getting outside, they were still getting their breaks, still getting physical activity, but they would have to wait to play. And then, of course, you have your extremely difficult students, and color cards and tickets, that doesn't usually work with those kids. So we would work together to devise an intervention plan just for them, which might include stickers, more rewards. Maybe we would break down the day into little pieces, and they would work on doing a good job during the little pieces. So we had a team that would help with those. So we created an atmosphere of respect. We are building those relationships. We know what our rules are. We know what they mean. We know what's going to happen if we follow them or don't follow them. And then finally, the last area of classroom management that I want to talk about is your classroom procedures. These are so important. If they don't know what they're supposed to do, they're going to start getting in trouble and goofing around. So, classroom procedures, routines, and expectations must be explicitly taught, modeled, and practiced beginning on the very first day of school. Never assume that students know the procedures. This is a little friend who I love dearly, very smart, but anytime I didn't teach a procedure well, I knew it because he probably wasn't doing the right thing, which resulted in breaking of items and throwing in different things. Even though he was smart enough really to know better, you could always tell when I hadn't taught a procedure well enough because they would start to take advantage of it. So this was the procedure that I used to teach procedures. I modified it from Daily 5. If anyone does the Daily 5, they actually have the 10 steps to independence. I wouldn't do all 10 steps for every single procedure, but it just went like this. So I would identify the procedure. So maybe your procedure is you're going to take your finished work and you're going to put it in the basket. And then I would set the purpose. Well, you're going to put it in the basket because Mrs. Morgan needs to look at it before you take it home. So they know what they're doing, they know why they're doing it. I have a white sheet over there. I wouldn't use that for every single procedure, but I used it for the center areas in my classroom. So I'd record the desired behavior. So I want you to get, when you're finished, you're going to get up, you're going to walk over, you're going to put it inside the basket so it won't fall out, and then you're going to go back to your area. And then I would have some students model it. Okay, show me what that should look like. We're going to get up, we're going to put our paper in the basket, and we're going to sit back down. Then I'll praise them. Great job. I like how you got up. You didn't bother others. Then the fun part is you have a few friends model the least desired behaviors. Okay, who can show me what this should not look like? So they love that one. So they come up, they're throwing their paper, they're poking people, they're being loud, and we talk about how we cannot have class and learn when we act like that. So, and then we practice. If possible, have every single friend in your class put the paper in and practice the procedure, which will take a long time, but it will be worth it in the end when everybody knows what to do. Now, here were some charts that we would use. Again, it would take too much time, I think, to do it for every single procedure. But if we had center areas in our classroom, when we introduced them, we would make a chart like this. So, for example, if it was the iPad area, we would make a note about why do we even go to iPads? Why does Mrs. Morgan have iPads in the classroom? We talk about how the apps help us practice, and we, practice our skills. Then we would record what the student should be doing in that center and what the teacher is doing. So in the iPad center, The student might be handling the iPad carefully. They're on the apps they're supposed to be on. They're quiet. We had a rule that the volume had to be off, or you had to have earphones in when you were working on your iPad. Usually during these times, the teacher is either walking around helping or in a small group. The work on writing area, we would talk about why do we work on writing. It helps us with our writing, helps us to be better writers, spellers, readers. What is the student doing in the center, and what is the teacher doing? So we talk about those together and we make those charts. It's not effective if you just do that one day and stick it up in the center. We talked about it for the first few weeks of school. Hey, we're going to the writing center now. Remember what you should be doing and what I'm going to be doing, until they knew exactly what that said. That template is also in your handouts. So if you'd like a copy of that, you can find it there. Okay, so and also in your handout, I made a list of procedures. Your class may have different procedures, but make sure all of these things get taught. Your morning and afternoon routines, turning in papers, how do they ask a question? We had a system with our fingers where 1 was drink, 2 was pencil, 3 was bathroom, 4 was a Kleenex, 5 was a question. We practiced that, how you want them to sit, how you want them to sit in chairs, lining up in the hallway, where they get their materials, how they clean them up. If they need a new pencil, what do they do? How they work with a partner, using their supplies. I only started my kids with pencils and crayons, and then we had a whole lesson every single time I added a new supply. Every time we got a scissors or glue, we talked about that. Cafeteria, using your technology. How do we get a book? How do we look when we're doing work at our desks? What do we do when we're finished? Classroom jobs. Make sure you just think through your entire day, and every piece of your day, you're teaching them exactly what they should be doing. I'm going to go back to the beginning in case you didn't get those links. Does anybody have any questions? Anything to add that's work today? Well, thank you all for listening. If you have any questions, I'll be here. You guys have a great day. Yes, yes. Yes.
We do that together, and it sounds like it's a little bit here and there. Well, it was instead of student teacher, it's mentioning, if they're at writing, they're writing, their voices are, they're discussing. Okay.
Yes, if you have that same. And then we'll also.
Yeah. And she. Maybe that she was like this there. It's almost. Yeah. Okay. Where at? Here. Okay, she got tired. She knows down for a while. 12. The week yeah. And she don't know.
Oh, there it is.
The one right there. I'll go back here. Full again? Yeah, but that one we can use. And this one we can use. We put stuff on it. Yeah. Lori coming in here, or Queen in here. I'll see if it's coming in. You got one from Marquita? One here. I'm glad you asked that because I thought, okay, I was gonna try both.
What are you doing? Not innovating. What's your name? This is my learning here. I used to teach all 6 and teach at 7. Oh, I went from here.
Did you find it?
I want you to I told her this way.
So no, it's not.
Where are you now? Where are you teaching? I didn't know you were still there.
Ready for your next?
Oh, he was at the
This is stream number 2.
I just caught a few here that are pretty good. How are you? Yeah, which grade? Well, I picked up on my mine
Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Susan, this is Gary. If you can hear me, call me on the walkie-talkie. Thank you. Susan, this is Gary. Excellent. I'm just going to let it run. I know it's a little sloppy, but it's running. I'm going to go see if I can find another room. There's so many people in the hallways. Thank you. And right now, her room is pretty darn full, but I don't think we've seen anybody downstairs yet, so you may or may not get some customers. And if you'll wait right there for just a few minutes, I'll tell you if we can do anything else.
I'm like, get you these curators. And I said, yes, she can. So, that was my thought.
As we get ready to get started on the slides, the PowerPoint slides are on that left-hand link and the handouts are on the right-hand link. And if you want to take a picture of those or write those down, I will show you what those are about in just a minute. I apologize, there's not more chairs. I couldn't even find chairs in another room to steal. We've got the PowerPoint and then the handouts. Alright, and I will put that back at the end. Okay. Okay, so I'll go ahead and introduce myself for those of you who were in our first session, but I'm Sharon Morgan. I'm the brand new Early Childhood Director at the State Department. Before coming to the state, I taught 18 years, mostly kindergarten and first grade. I also taught T1 when T1 was around. In Oklahoma City, Putnam City, and Piedmont is where I came from. For this, National Board Certified, last year was a Teacher of the Year finalist, so I started working with the State Department on advisory committees and that kind of thing before coming on this year. My Twitter is up there, JSK Morg, if you would like to follow me. I noticed when I came that all the other subject areas had a hashtag, and early childhood people did not have a hashtag. So I made a hashtag, OK Early Ed, which I'm hoping this year we can get going. So if you're doing anything fun in your classrooms, early childhood, if you would hashtag that, I can look at it and see it. I talk to a lot of stakeholders and groups about early childhood, and that gives me a way to connect. Also, I'm going to pass this around because this session is usually early childhood people. This is just for me to kind of get a contact list. If I need to come to this area or something, or you need me, then I have some names. So I'll just pass this around. Also, again, because you're early childhood, not that I didn't want my classroom management people to know who I was, but you might need me specifically, so I have cards up here. There hasn't been anyone in this position for a while, so I'm kind of making it up and just looking and seeing what we need. And if you have any ideas, something that would help support you, please let me know, and I will do my best. So that's just me. These are my two girls. They are 14 and 17, and they pretend like they don't need me, but I have been on the road for 2 weeks, and they are starting to make phone calls. So that makes me feel a little bit better. Okay, so on that link for the handouts, I want to show you some resources first, and then we'll start into the standards. Did you all know there's an ELA OK Teachers website? Anybody ever? Okay, I didn't know that before I came to the State Department. You can actually find this planning page on that website, but it's also in your handouts. As we're implementing the new English Language Arts standards, this is where you can put your unit or theme or question. I'm so sorry, I know I can't see everybody. This is where you would put books that you would read, the text you would read to go with that, and then down here you would write what kind of writing your students would produce, and then here are all the standards around, so you can plan out and pick out what would you do for each standard that revolves around that unit. This is just an explanation of that. My early childhood brain had a little trouble with this particular sheet, so I made a new one with pictures and shapes, because those make more sense to me. So I don't know if this, in either one they do the same thing, it's just formatted differently. So here is your unit theme or question. You could also, just depending on your classroom, you could pick your reading story if you are doing a reading story, and then plan out how you're going to meet all the standards using your story. We did monthly units, B's, communities, that kind of thing. So I might do that for each one of those units. It starts with speaking and listening up here. We know speaking and listening is a skill kind of by itself. And then you move into vocabulary, foundations and processes, critical thinking, multimodal literacy, which we'll talk about, research language, and then down here is independent reading and writing. And then down here you can put the titles of the books that you would read and what kind of writing your students would produce. So as you're implementing the standards, this might just be a planning page that helps you. If I was doing it, I might spend time this year planning it out, and then next year I could look back and add to it or change it as needed. Because we're early childhood people, I hope that you're doing centers and playing and that type of activity, which is so important. So I made a center planning template. So if you've mapped out your skills, you could write down, what you could do in your centers to help support your skills. And then I made one that was blank, so you can make it however you want to make it with your centers. So that is what's in the handouts. And then I did want to make sure everybody knew, if you go to the website, where the skills were. So you can go down here to Oklahoma Academic Standards and push any one of these buttons for the English Language Arts, Science, Math, and Health and PE. I forgot to ask, do I have pre-K teachers in here? A kindergarten, first, second, third, anybody third or up? Anybody administrator? Okay, so we just have teachers. That's good. I do much better with just teachers. If you are pre-K, I'm sorry. I was just like, oh, we're gonna get to talk to teachers, and I have counselors and music teachers. I was like, I don't really know what to do with you. I was going to tell you, pre-K does not have science standards in the new standards. They were being developed along with Common Core. Common Core fell to pieces. The pre-K science went with that. So we're working on that, but talking to Tiffany Neal, who is your science, the director of science, really in pre-K what you want to be focusing on is the 5 senses, really just getting information with the 5 senses. You're welcome to use any old materials you have with science investigations, but that should be your focus. Now, you notice that social studies is not on here because social studies, those skills are a little bit older. If you go up to services and instruction, here's all the areas. You can go to social studies. My presentation today was mainly focused, here's your social studies skills right there, was mainly focused on ELA and math because those are our newest standards, but I definitely encourage integrating all of those together. Then I wanted to show you one more thing that we're excited about. So, and again, I didn't know this until I got to State Department, but there is this website called ELA OK Teachers that has resources. It is maintained by Josh Flores, who is our secondary ELA. So some of these won't apply to us, but I did want to show you something down here. Oh, it changed it. Okay, keep coming down here. All right, so we have curriculum framework writers that are writing lesson plans to go with the new standards for each grade level, so you can see what that looks like. And the very first drafts are on this website. So it says the first drafts are currently available for public comments. Okay, and then you'll go to a Google folder that looks like this. If you are pre-K or kindergarten, you can open the early childhood. And then here is a lesson plan, and it's actually a beginning of the year lesson plan about rules and citizenship that integrates the standards. Just so if you want to look at a lesson plan, you can see what that looks like. It's an understanding by design format. It was unfamiliar to me. But here on the left are your goals and your standards, the evidence, the assessments that you're going to do when you finish, your goals, and then if you come down here, like here's the lesson sequence. So they had actually planned out a lesson. So if you're not sure how to do this and you want to look at an example, there's one right there. If you go to early elementary, here's a first, second, and third grade one. And they actually, I don't think kindergarten or pre-K kindergarten that group got to this, but they actually even included, sorry, this is slow. They included, okay, that planning templates that I just showed you. So this is kind of what they did. Their unit theme was citizenship, and these were all the different skills that they pulled out from that theme. So if that gives you a resource to look at, I want to make sure that you knew that was there. They're also working on that in math, but those are not posted just yet. Also in this folder, they have parent companions. So if you want to teach your parents about the new standards, there's a note in there that you can use to help you out. Okay, so just wanted to make sure everybody knew those were up. Okay, so now we usually do a foursquare activity where we actually get up and move and get into groups, and I'm not sure if that's going to be possible in this classroom, so I may just have you hold up fingers. So what I'd like to know is what background you have with our new standards. So this is what I was thinking. Number one is, oh no, the school year started and I haven't even read them, or I didn't even know they were existed, which I had. Number two, I've read them a little, my friend kind of read them, I know a little bit about them. 3, I've worked on them, maybe made lesson plans, and 4, I've got it, we've already curriculum mapped, I'm ready to go. So just kind of give me with your fingers since we can't move. Where are we? Okay. Okay, so we're mostly 2, so you're at 3. 2, okay, so you're at 3, so have you done a little more work with them? So what have you done?
I've got my pacing guides,
Okay,
and right now they're aligned to Yale standards because I'm still waiting on correlation between the two.
right. And that may be something that we ask the students to work on too. I'm not sure that we'll do all those. And what about you guys back here?
We wanna know if there's a 4 and we wanna still.
Well, I will say I had one woman, she totally intimidated me because I think she had worked with the writers and I didn't have that experience. Okay, so we're mostly 2s. Okay, so I think what we're gonna do, and I'm checking time because that clock is off. I think what we're gonna do is I'm gonna put you into groups and I'm gonna give each group a standard to look at and describe. Now, I'm gonna pass out these booklets. I do not have these booklets in mass quantities. But since you're our last site, and I have one more session, so I have to keep the booklets. If you come back at the end of the day, if I have any more, you can grab them. Again, because of budgets, I don't know if the State Department is going to print these. So I'm going to pass these out so you can look over the standards, and I'll just kind of give you an overview, and then we'll split up into groups, and I'll just give each group a standard, or a standard to work on. Let's see. Hopefully I have enough. I started with 50, but they are disappearing quickly. It's terrible, yes. And then one day I was actually talking to a teacher, and a teacher came in, put their stuff down, and stole all the ones off the table. And I was like, they're kidding. But that's, I mean, I'll be honest with you, I was a teacher for 18 years. I stole stuff all the time. I mean, somebody leaves the room, and what do you do? Anybody else? Lori, I'm out now. Oh, you know what? I was going to ask another question. I forgot. I usually do this with the Foursquare. This is ELA. Can you give me a 1 if you'd rather focus on ELA, 2 if you'd like to go over math, and 3 if you'd really like to do both if possible? Anybody have a preference? Oh, we've got a lot of 3s. Okay, so we'll try to do this quickly. And I don't have my book, but I believe if you look at page 9 and 10, is that this one? 9 and 10 has those blue bands on it, and those show the standards. So in the past skills that we've been using, there were 4 overarching standards. And if you use past skills, they were kind of oppressive. There were skills, there were sub-skills. I felt like it was hard to read. There were a lot of skills. So this should be more concise, less repetitive. But you've got these 8 overarching standards. So it starts with, and you'll see them in the blue bands, speaking and listening, foundations and processes, which actually has 2 parts, which is the foundations is your phonological, phonics, print concepts, and fluency skills, and then also the reading, writing process, just the process of getting a book, reading it, decoding a word, the writing process. Where do I start writing? How do I spell a word? Then you get to number 3, which is critical reading and writing, where we're doing more analyzing. 4 is vocabulary, 5 is language, 6 is research, 7 is multimodal, and 8 is independent reading and writing. You'll notice that under each one of those standards, there is a reading component and a writing component. We know that reading and writing support each other. If you want to be a better reader, you're going to be writing. If you want to be a better writer, you're going to be reading. So each one of the skills has reading and writing in it. Here's a picture of one of the pages. It has your career and college ready standard, your reading and writing standards on the side, and then it has your objectives for each grade level. And I feel like this is helpful because then you can look at what should have happened before and what should be happening after. And that tends to help clarify. Okay, so go back to the standards. And I don't have a book, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to just put you in 8 groups, and I will give each group a standard. And if you'll just read over your standard, we're going to get into math, we'll have to do it quickly. But if you just give us maybe a 30-second overview of what the standard means in your words. And we also spent some time looking at how it starts in pre-K and how it builds up to 1st and 2nd grade. Because the standards do build upon themselves. So, we need 8 groups. So, can we have, I'm trying to figure out the best way to do this. Can you all be standard 1? And right here, can you do the same? Can you all do standard 2? Is that enough people? Well, you guys move those desks, I don't even really like this. Okay, how about uniform recipe 5? Okay, so you're going to this is not my favorite format. I don't know how these high school people fit in this room because everybody's very cute. So if you'll find your standard, read over what it said. Just give us a 30-second overview of what it means in your own words, and maybe how it starts in pre-K and building. So I'll give you about 5 minutes. Can I ask a question? Yes. Okay, so they're going to elaborate. Right here.
Okay, so this is where I need to.
Yeah, so do you mind?
No, they
Okay,
skipped it, so.
I just got it back, so I'll.
That they are, they're related, sounds like. Does that have to go all the way?
It's too
That's a challenge for us. I mean, that's a big skill. I mean,
Mine is the writing, because it just starts with, but I mean, I can write in
Okay, let's go ahead and come back together. You'll kind of point to the person who is going to be speaking. So, point quickly. We're just going to go through each standard. If you'll just give us an overview of what that standard means and maybe what you noticed about it. So, we're going to start with standard 1. Speaking is listening. So, we're all listening. No, okay, so this is on page 13. Page 13 is where we have speaking and listening. Okay, you guys had a great conversation. So kind of just give us a little overview what you noticed about speaking and listening. You can tell us.
Oh my gosh. Well, we talked about that. The easier right here. That it said actively listen, and we're kind of laughing with pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade that they actively. But we did talk that she's going to start in pre-K teaching them to actively speak and listen, and then they're going to move on to kindergarten, and then they're going to come to first and second. So by the time they get to her, they maybe can't actively listen and speak, but it is going to have to be with monitoring and teaching them how to, because they don't know how to speak and listen. So we are going
And
to.
if anyone came to classroom management, I talked a lot about that with the morning meeting. And we just practice listening and speaking, to one another. This talks about directions. She mentioned in pre-K and kindergarten it was with guidance and support. So it's not expected to be mastered, but please don't ignore those skills because first and second grade teachers, they can't do collaborative projects if you haven't been working on speaking and listening in the little grades. So that probably won't come on a report card necessarily, but please work on it. So that's really speaking and listening. I mean, it's having the conversations, being respectful of one another, listening to someone who's asking a question. Okay, that was good. Okay, you guys are number 2. And this was the difficult for you because number 2 actually has 2 different pieces. The reading foundations and the reading and writing processes. Okay, so anybody want to talk about reading foundations?
The reading foundations, the students will develop the skills. We start in pre-K with your phonological awareness, and then it carries through print concepts, phonics and word study, and fluency. So we're starting with pre-K, we're teaching them their letters and some of their sounds, and then in kindergarten we're continuing, reviewing the letters, teaching more sounds. First grade gets into the decoding and context of the words, and by second grade they're into high frequency words, digraphs, combinations.
I do want to mention something about reading foundations. With the exception of the phonics, for the most part, reading foundations stop after the early childhood years. So it is so important that we lay that foundation, because they're not teaching phonemic awareness when they get older. I mean, they're supposed to review it, but that's really our job. They get more strategic and more complex with text, but it's at the early childhood level that we teach those foundations, and hopefully those become automatic, so they can continue to increase the complexity of their text. So I did want to make sure you knew oral language is so important for early childhood, and those reading foundations so important in our grade levels. Okay, so this
Okay, on the reading and writing process, it says students will use a variety of recursive reading and writing processes. And through reading, going into writing, in pre-kindergarten or pre-K, they begin to retell or reenact major events from a read aloud with guidance and support, and trying to recognize the main idea. Kindergarten goes, we're doing the same thing, but in finding the main idea. On first grade, it goes from main idea, adding to details. They're looking for the important details to find that main idea. And that, I guess, is on the reading part. And the writing, pre-K is expressing themselves through drawings, dictating, and emergent writing. Kindergarten develops first drafts by expressing themselves through drawings and emergent writing, and then first grade students will develop and edit first drafts using appropriate spacing. Well, I'm just like,
She's a first grade teacher.
But no, I was first grade for most of mine, and I mean, you know, you edit, you put a period, you check the capitals, you.
it's using that left to right, top to bottom progression. The left to right, top to bottom progression is not a problem for me, but what I focused on from the very beginning of the school year was a sentence begins with a capital letter, and I make that big R.
Yeah, I do
Has to make sense, end in a period, question mark, exclamation point. That's where I got it.
Okay, yeah, that's that. We did the same thing in our classroom.
But it didn't stick.
Right.
I mean, how do you, I can't say make,
No.
but
To me, it's just a lot of authentic writing, and I've never found that it works correcting a bunch of sentences. I mean, we did it together, but it's just a lot of authentic writing. But even in fourth grade, they still complain about that. So you know, just keep practicing. We go back. I can't say I have a definitive answer because I don't know that we were very successful. I mean, they were better at the end of the year than they were at the beginning of the year. But as they get into writing longer stories, it kind of gets lost in there. But just keep practicing. So, and one teacher I know talks about how the reading and writing process was really the application of the reading foundations. You know, you're practicing those foundations. You're decoding cards, you're learning how to write coding cards. Okay, very good. So now you'll notice the standards, they go from more collaborative, speaking and listening, and they get more independent as they go. So you all are critical reading and writing. So what would you say your overview is of that one?
Okay, well, we know that in pre-kindergarten and kindergarten, basically they're naming authors and illustrators, talking about the roles of the author and illustrators. They're having to describe who the characters are, where the setting is at. They're having to answer the questions of who, what, when, where. Whereas in first grade, we were a little.
There is a jump there.
Yeah, reinforcing kindergarten,
They're
exactly
having-
what pre-K was, and then
Yeah, and then suddenly they're having to defend why they chose that.
Right.
Sort of like, you know, they have to identify the author's purpose, and they have to, some of the same things, but like it says, people will find textual evidence.
Textual evidence, correct.
That just bowls me over as a kindergarten teacher, so, I mean, and so that seems like they're having to do more, and they're having to use, setting and plot and main characters, but they're having to show evidence of where that's at.
But probably in kindergarten, you talked about what's the setting of the story. They know where the story is. So in first grade, you would just say, how do I know that's the setting? How do I know they're in a process? Well, they're on the swing set. That to me is textual evidence.
Okay, good.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
I mean, you have to
the
defend
why
it.
of the why of your question.
The why, right.
Why do you think this is back to the
Yes. Does that make sense? So in kindergarten, you can probably say, where does the story take place? And they can tell you the part. In first grade, you need to be able to defend why. You're doing more
Well, I kind of do that towards the end of the
I'm
year,
sure you do.
so. And then the writing, you know, we're using, drawing labels and dictating, but in the first of the narrative.
Yes.
They have to add a beginning, middle, and end, and then informative, and then opinions, so they have to express their opinions. So it's
Right.
But I
Yes.
still think that those things are a little bit embedded in your curriculum and dictating kindergarten.
I think so. I mean, one thing I noticed that they taught, like Josh talks about in secondary all the time, is the integrating of the different standards, and I really think we do such a good job of that in early childhood. I mean, it's just who we are. I mean, that's just always been our philosophy, that we integrate and we talk about all those things. So yes, you're probably doing something like that already, and even extending it to first grade and kindergarten. But in first grade, they're expected to do that. But yes, in critical reading and writing, there's also a jump from where you're doing pictures and dictation to in first grade where you're starting narrative, informational, and opinion writing. So that is it. So you're doing more analyzing there in critical reading and writing. So that's standard 3. Who had 4? Was I over here? Did I put 4? Did you? Did you guys do standard 4?
No, we had 5.
Did I skip it? Anybody? Anybody? Did I skip over it? Okay, well, we'll be doing that one together. Okay, so standard 4 is vocabulary. I wanted to make this note. Sight words are in, no, so nobody did 4. Okay, that might have, maybe I just skipped over it. Sight words are in reading foundation, standard 2. So vocabulary, standard 4, that is your academic and domain-specific vocabulary. Your science and social studies words, your literary element words. That's what this is talking about right here. We can look at it. If you need word ideas, you can go to the State Department website and look at building academic vocabulary, and it does have a word list. If you don't need that, that's fine. Some districts have already made it. We talked about how this applies to early childhood. And if you're in pre-K and you're talking about plants, have a diagram with the plant parts. I mean, stem, root, petals, those are, I mean, that's academic vocabulary. Your social studies, world, I mean, put those words up. In first grade, something I did is we would have words each week, and we would talk about them and draw a picture to go with them and get some background knowledge. If they could use it correctly in a sentence, they got to put a tally mark up. If they could use it correctly in their writing, I gave them 2 tally marks. And then we had a sparkly word wall, and we put the words up on the word wall and practice them so they could use them in their writing. One teacher had a fancy Nancy word wall with had boas all over it. So they take their fancy words and they put them up there. So just make sure that you're pulling out that vocabulary so they're listening to that. That's standard 4. Also, thinking about standard 3 and 4, it deals with complex texts. Since many of our students are not reading independently, it's important that we're reading complex text to them. An example that I feel is for complex text is Stella Luna. I believe it's on a 3rd grade level. But if you think about why this is complex, you really have to have some background knowledge about bats, birds. It has some pretty intense vocabulary in this book. You've got some plot lines going where you've got Stella Luna separated from her mom and then dealing with the birds. So it's really more complex. And we don't want to shy away from those books just because we're early childhood. Now, when you probably have to read it a few times before they get it. You may read it once, talk about the vocabulary, you might read it again, but it's helping them listen to that vocabulary, listen to those complex sentence structures so they can move towards that. I make a joke about being, I don't want to go over, in the State Department, and I thought I was an intelligent person. Then I came to the State Department, and they talk in acronyms and things I had never heard of before. I had to look up all those things. They had to pull me aside, give me some background knowledge. Now, the more I do it, the more I get used to it, the easier it is, but it was not easy at the beginning. Same thing with your kiddos. It's not going to be easy at the beginning, but the learning is in the struggle. So make sure you're listening to complex texts, or you're reading them so they can listen to them. Okay, hopefully I got all the others. So you guys were 5. So that one was vocabularies. So number 5 is language. So what would be your overview of language?
They have to have oral language experiences in pre-K and kindergarten before you can go on to being able to write choose your nouns and your verbs. They have to realize that this is a part of their language. And you start using positional words and time relationships, before and after and above and below. And here's where they first start using capital letters and periods. So when
It's
they
your
get to
grammar
fourth grade, they
skills.
say, we've never been told that. Yes, they have.
I know, we always have
Yeah,
to
been
defend
there.
ourselves. We did that. We did that. And we taught them how to do shoes and go to the bathroom, and we still did this. So, we did. So, language is really the grammar skills. And when you're kindergarten and pre-K, it's a lot of, like you said, concretely sorting the words. So that when I get to first grade and I have to label this group as a noun, they have lots of experiences grouping those words. No, sorry. Don't post that. Hey, we need more standards. I was trying to find you. I was
Looks like you would be out of standards.
I know. I mean, I don't have it. If that picture is beautiful, come back. You mentioned Josh. Josh is the secondary ELA. He's in charge of that. We had an elementary ELA, Michelle Sprague. I don't know if anybody knew her, but she has left to go to another position, so she is not with us. So, trying to help in her area. Okay, 6. Were you all 6? Okay, this group. So tell me about 6.
Okay, step 6 is research, is where the students are acquiring and refining and sharing knowledge. Okay.
Yes.
Reading pre-K and kindergarten are pretty much doing the same thing when they have to identify pictures and charts and grade appropriate texts, but then in kindergarten and reading, the students have to identify graphic features to understand the text. And in first grade, it's a little bit more complicated. The students themselves have to decide who can answer the questions about their topic. The students identify graphic features, including photos and illustrations, a little bit more complex. Students identify the location and purpose of their visual and text reference sources. Okay, that's in reading. And then in the writing portion, they have to summarize and paraphrase and integrate their evidence of their research. And they also have to cite the sources. Yes, to create their reports and projects, but in pre-K, the students, in their writing, they have to generate topics of interest. I mean, I guess you were going to ask the group what they're interested in, and kindergarten, they do the same thing, generate topics of interest. But then it gets a little bit more complex. The students find information in kindergarten, and they provide sources. I thought, wow,
And this scares us. Early childhood people are like, good grief, research in early childhood. Okay, here's what the framework writers did. And I was working with pre-K and kindergarten. They even talked about putting the pictures of the school workers on a board and saying, if I have a cut, where do I go? I mean, it's just as simple as I have a problem, I have a question, where do I go to get the answer? Putting charts up there, pictures. Okay, I don't know about this. Where do I go to get an answer? I know last year we had this huge debate in my class about if ladybugs bites. I mean, early childhood, heated debate in the classroom. So what to, I said, well, the position was, well, they have to bite because they eat. So, but no, they don't, I have a lot of these. So anyway, you know how that goes. So, we got online and we watched a YouTube video about it. I mean, it's just, we're asking a question, we have a problem, where do we go to find the answers?
Yeah, in my classroom, we do that a lot. Display it on the board.
Right.
It's amazing how you generate questions.
Right.
Just from the pictures and to show.
So really, if you think about it, you're probably already doing that. If your kids are asking questions and you're finding answers, you're modeling research. So don't, just because it says research, we do that, I think, all the time. They have questions, we investigate. So that would be research components. Okay, so 7, are you all 7? Okay, this is really my favorite one. Again, it's kind of scary, but it's multimodal literacy. So how would you explain that?
Basically what we've done with it is you're using a variety of different texts or videos, different things for students to comprehend, and then that can come out in several different ways.
Yeah.
Early level, maybe it's retelling pictures, drawing pictures, retelling to show that they know what might happen next, what they think might happen next. Then I go to the second grade where I spend most of my time. Basically, you're going through summaries, Venn diagrams, comparing your characters, and it just slowly continues to build.
Right.
I never.
Well, it does, and you can do it. It's one of those connecting standards that can go through all the other standards. Basically, you're using different modes to present information. It could be art. It could be a felt board. It could be puppets. It could be a little video. It talks a lot about digital and technology in that one. Again, think about how many things you do in your classroom where you're integrating different modes. They're doing a presentation, they're making an art project to go with the plants, they're maybe labeling it. Those types of activities. So very good, very good. So don't let that one scare you, because I really think in early childhood we do that quite a bit. I mean, you have them act things out. They have costumes, they have puppets. You do a little video. All of those things are multimodal. So then you all had independent reading and writing somewhere in here. Okay, who wants to tell us about that one?
Can I have your attention in the building? We'd like to let you know that we have 2 food trucks located in the east parking lot. That would be the parking lot that you entered in. Mexi Asian Fusion and Crazy Birds.
Okay, so how would you talk about reading, independent reading and writing?
What we noticed in pre-K and kindergarten was exactly the same, where they, in reading, they're just developing their interest in read alouds and share reading, and then interacting with books independently, and then moving to first grade, they're actually reading independently.
Right.
And on the writing in pre-K and kindergarten, it was just expressing their ideas through a combination of drawing and emergent writing. And then it just gets a little bit more detailed and first gets going.
Yeah, that's perfect. When you're pre-K and kindergarten, you just want them to have the interest in reading and writing. They want to go to the writing center. They want to go pick out a book. As you get older, it's more making choices for yourself. So in first grade, you should be able to start choosing a book that's appropriate for you. So again, that tends to be scary for early childhood. We cannot independently read and write. It's not really about them sitting there and being able to read the whole book. You know, they may just be reading the pictures, but just the interest in wanting to do it. Okay, so I'm gonna try you. I'm here for the food truck. When you think about these standards, we have major concepts and connecting concepts. Obviously, the major concepts would be on a test. Connecting concepts are not so easily tested. And if you were having to pick essential skills that you had to teach, it would tend to be reading foundations, reading and writing, critical reading and writing, vocabulary and language. But these over here, when integrated, make a very rich lesson that's integrated. The standards are not meant to be a checklist. You're not supposed to do standard 1, standard 2, standard 3. You're supposed to be teaching them together, which again, I think we're good at. I had a little project that I thought I'd share from my class. We were doing opinion writing, and we were doing book reviews. So they had to pick their favorite book. We watched the Reading Rainbow book reviews and made an outline of what information those kids gave us. They followed that outline. They had to choose a book. They had to write a book review. And then we put it in a little app called ChatterPix. It's Chatter and then Pix, P-I-X, where we took a picture of the book and then he drew a mouth, and you can actually hear him reading his book review.
I am Albert Einstein. I like this book because I like to learn, study, make good choices because Albert made good choices. When Albert was born, the book said Albert had a big head. When Albert was 4, he was sick. His dad gave him a compass. Albert loved it. Read this book to find out more.
Now, that was a higher level child in my class, just so you know. I had one that was like a little pebble book about, it was brothers, and his was like, I read the book Brothers because it was easy to read. I have a brother, read the book. But again, you know, that's differentiating. I taught the same lesson to everybody, but that child picked a higher level book. My child who wasn't as good a reader picked a lower level book. They still completed the same task, just on different levels. But you can see how we were speaking and listening. We made it multimodal by putting it in a little app. It was independent reading and writing. They had to use all their reading foundations. Okay, so now, and we talked about text complexity. Okay, I do want to get you out in time. We're usually late. So, we're going to transition into math, and I'm just going to show you a few things about math. So when we think about reading, before we transition into math, what do we love about reading? I thought that was like a lawnmower. Do you ever have a lawnmower guy going by your room and you're just like, oh, what do you need? And they all run through the doors. Sorry. I thought that was anyway, why do we love reading? It's entertaining. It's fun. I picked those books because Hungry Caterpillar was my favorite as a kid. My dad was a master Fox and Sox reader, could read it with no mistakes. Brown Bear was the first book my children read to me independently. They were so excited, you know, they could read. We had to learn all of our letters, all of our phonics, but do we remember learning our letters and our phonics, or do we remember the books that we were able to read? Okay, so in our math skills, I don't know if the actual skills change that much, but we want to think about math kind of like we think about reading. It's not about the addition and the subtraction and the geometry and the shapes. It's about the experiences that go with math. We don't always think about math that way. So why do we love math? Here's a picture of my friends making pattern block designs. We had a social studies unit about economics, and they had a little bake sale, which was really peanut-free, individually wrapped snacks. We called it a bake sale, and the other friends from other classes came and bought things. Everything was a quarter. They could bring quarters or dollars. So we had this discussion about if they give you $1 and they pick 2 things, how much do you give back? This is why we need math. Also, of course, we're doing science experiments. They're counting how many water drops go on the coins. This is what math is about. It's not about those individual skills, which you need for these activities, but you want to think about math and experiences. So, and here's all the processes, but we're going to have, we're running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and skip this. So, excellence in mathematics requires equity, high expectations, and strong support for all students. This has been difficult for me in the classroom. I was very good at support for reading, and then I pulled reading groups, and we did all this differentiated learning. I had trouble doing this in math. We actually went to math groups, where instead of teaching a whole group lesson, I had 3 groups in my classroom, and they came to the teacher table for a lesson. They went to math with a partner, which was just games, and then we had math with technology, which was just math apps, and we rotated. That way I could teach the same lesson with different levels of support, and I didn't have a whole lesson. Everybody does a paper. These kids are finished. These kids need my help. I don't know what to do with them. That was the struggle that I had. So we did centers, guided math centers, stimulating curiosity in math, having problem solving, and using technology. So I'm going to give you this problem. Anybody do a number talk in here? Do you all do number talks? Okay, if you want to look into it, there's a book called Number Talks. You can also find them on Pinterest or Teachers Pay Teachers, which are my go-to places. So this is an example of a number talk. So if I put these up here, how many dots do you see? And how did you see it? 5. Oh, yes, 5 and 4. Somebody said it. 5, 3, and 1. Did anybody see it a different way? Because somebody, and somebody saw 3, 3, and 3.
Is it number 2?
It's called the number talk. Anybody see it in a different way? So what you might do is you put a problem up here, let them work on solving it, and then discuss all the different strategies that they use to solve the problem. If I saw 5, 3, and 1, or 5 and 4, what number is it still? 9. It doesn't matter that I saw it in different ways. And of course, that's an example of subitizing, where you see the number and know it automatically without having to count. Here would be a higher level one. So here's my problem. David bought a box of 24 popsicles. If you make 2 every day, how many days would it take for him to run out? So you give him that problem. You might let him struggle with it. Try to figure out the strategy. Then you talk about what ways did you solve that problem, and model all the different ways that we solve the problem. We talk about how our brains do it in different ways. If you counted by 2s and you drew a picture, it's not wrong. We're getting to the answer. We do talk about which strategy would help us get to the answer fastest. Obviously, we can't be in 6th grade drawing a bunch of pictures, but that's a beginning strategy, and then extend it. Okay, I think this is a good example. And we'll end with this. Here's a kindergarten class, and she's doing a number talk. And just listen to how they're communicating, how they're giving strategies.
DJ, what did you see? 5. What did you see, Jen? 5. What about you, Alex?
5.
5. What did you see?
5.
Did somebody see it another way? Alex, how did you see 5?
If you add 1 more, that makes.
Right. Right. Christian?
If you add the bottom, I really did.
Oh, if all the bottom was filled in, it would be 10. How'd you know, DJ, it was just 5? You said 5 also. How did you notice that?
The bottom is not filled in.
Okay, what about the top?
It's just a
They're all filled in. If the
And
top
then
is
that
all
happens
filled
to be
in,
a 10 for you.
five. Sounds like nobody had to count. You
Because
were able
5
to see
plus
that.
5 equals 10, but if you minus 5 times 10, you get 5.
Okay, because it was
And
just.
you always have that kid, right?
Alright.
When he's elevating everyone else's thinking, they're starting to think, what's the inside of this guy?
Jesselyn, what did you see?
6,
Sophie?
7,
What did you see, Arjun?
7, 7,
7.
7.
What did you see? 7? 7? Tell me how you saw 7, Rose.
Because the top was filled in and 2 more would make 7.
How did you think about that? The top was filled in,
And 2 more would make 7.
so you knew that was how many?
5.
5?
2
And
more make 7.
did you say 5 and 2 is 7, or did you say 5, 6, 7?
No, 5 and 2.
Did you think of it a different way?
If it's a 10 frame, then if you had 1 more, it would be 8. And if you had 2 more, it would be 10. If you took 3 away, it would be
Do one more then. You know what's on there.
Give them a call, they come up with a no. She gets lots of different answers.
Priya, what did you see? Okay. Alex, what did you see? What did you see? Okay. 9, 6, 4. I had lots of different numbers that time. Tell me what you were seeing, DJ.
because both of those are the same.
They are. They look the same, don't they?
And it's more because they have 2 of them.
Okay. Show me how you found 6.
Because that, if you have 1 more down right there, it will be 7.
It will. Show me.
10.
10.
She let him revise his thinking. She didn't tell him he was wrong, she let him figure it out.
I counted in my head.
You did? Could you start over here and just count them fast? You did. Did anybody else see it a different way? Brendan, what did you notice?
I've seen 5s on that for a long time, so I knew it was 5 and 5 make 10.
Okay, so you recognize that that was 5. Where have you seen that that's 5? How do you know that that's 5?
Because I've played lots of games before at my house,
What kind of games?
like lots of games and stuff like that.
Okay, and so where do you see these dots like this that make
When I
5?
get a 5,
On what?
on the dice.
On the dice. Okay, so you
Dice
recognize that on the
games,
dice
domino
was
games,
5, and that
so
was 5, and
important in
you
your
already
class.
knew that 5 and 5 was 10? Okay, you ready for another one? Ready? Makai, did you go 5?
5,
5?
5.
Oh my God.
Notice she's now hidden the number from them so they can't.
Have you saw 5?
Yeah.
You counted them? Okay, you counted them. DJ?
If you have 1 more, it would be more than 5.
Okay, you had 1 more right there, what would it be?
6.
6. So it almost looked like 6, but it was missing 1. Did you see that too, Christian?
5. If you add 2 more, that will make 7.
Yes, you're right. You recognize that. So Matthew, did you recognize that? How did you know?
Because I've seen one like that on a dice.
Oh, come show us what you mean by you've seen 4. Where's 4?
Right there.
Oh, okay, go sit down so I can show everybody what you mean. He said he saw this part that looked like 4 on a dice. And then what did you do? So you said 4,
And then I put 1 more and that would make 5.
and that would make 5. Good job. 4 and 1 more would make 5. Is that what you saw too, Braden?
No, if you put 1 in the middle, that means I would know it was 5.
Oh, so if you move this dot down here, that would be 5? Okay, that was another good way of looking at that. You moved a dot. You kind of do that in your head, didn't you? Okay.
Okay, so you see how she taught that lesson? She gave them a problem, they communicated, they were building number sense, they were building fluency, operations. So While the math standards I don't think are that much different, the way you teach it and the communicating and the processes are what we like to. I'm sorry we didn't have very much time to work on that, but it's what we want in math. So Josh gave us new ones, so you get to keep. And thank you all so much. I'm going to get you out of here so you can get your food truck. I'm kind of thinking. Thank you all so much.
Attention ladies, we've had a gray purse turned into the main office, also a pair of ladies' sunglasses. If you are missing a purse or your sunglasses, come to the main office.
No, it's through the school.
I mean, some of the districts were doing behavioral programs up.
I used to teach at Head Start, which was
Thank you very much.
well, I actually didn't actually teach, but I was a helper. But I didn't, and that's like two weeks.
Okay.
But yeah, they've given me a video program. No.
No, I started with 12, and then I ended up with 3 moving, and I graduated 9.
Did your name written? Did you
Yeah.
sign up for this?
Yeah.